On November 29, 1970, a chilling discovery was made in the remote Isdalen Valley, a place locals ominously called Death Valley. The burned body of an unknown woman was found lying among the rocks, so badly damaged that identification seemed almost impossible. Yet what investigators uncovered only deepened the mystery. Soot inside her lungs revealed she had been alive as the fire consumed her, with the official cause of death later ruled as carbon monoxide poisoning. But that wasn't all. She had a bruised neck, possibly from a blow or fall, and toxicology reports showed she had swallowed between 50 and 70 sleeping pills before she died. As police began to piece together her story, more unsettling clues emerged. 2 suitcases linked to the woman were discovered at a nearby train station, filled with wigs, cosmetics, and currencies from multiple countries. Every clothing label had been removed, but a pair of boots was traced back to Oscar Rortved's footwear store, where a shop assistant recalled a well-dressed woman who spoke English with an accent, took her time choosing shoes, and carried a faint garlic odor. Witnesses across Norway reported a woman matching her description staying in hotels under multiple identities, suggesting she possessed several passports. She appeared sophisticated, stylish, and spoke some German. Among her belongings were coded notes, quickly deciphered, revealing nothing more than a record of her travels. Even her dental work stood out: 14 filled teeth and several gold crowns. Who was the Isdal woman, and how did she come to die such a painful and lonely death? Given the timing, it's hard to ignore the shadow of the Cold War hanging over this case. Norway, and particularly Bergen, had already seen confirmed espionage activity, and the Isdal woman's movements raised immediate suspicion. Her pattern of travel suggests purpose rather than leisure. Combined with her use of aliases, the wigs, and her ability to move between identities with ease, it paints the picture of someone accustomed to operating under the radar. What strengthens this theory most are the witness accounts. In the days leading up to her death, multiple people described tense, controlled interactions between her and unidentified men. One hotel employee recalled unexpectedly entering her room and finding her with a man, both sitting in silence, neither acknowledging the intrusion. Then there's the incident on November 22nd, where she was seen whispering with a man at a ticket booth in Bergen before abruptly changing plans. Days later, she was seen on the Fløyen hillside, walking ahead of 2 men, seemingly being followed. If true, the sighting suggests she may have been under pressure, surveillance, or even in danger. Despite this, her coded notes, while initially suspicious, turned out to be little more than a personal travel record, which was easily deciphered. The use of multiple identities, while intriguing, wasn't as sophisticated as it sounds. In 1970, forged documents were far easier to obtain and didn't require the specialization that they would today. Modern DNA profiling has also undermined one of the most persistent claims, that she was linked to Israeli intelligence by pointing clearly toward European origins. More importantly, much of her behavior contradicts what we know about espionage tradecraft. Spies are trained to blend in, to avoid attention, to become invisible. The Isdal woman did the opposite. From her distinctive appearance to the impressions she left on witnesses, she stood out. And perhaps the strongest argument against this theory, in over 50 years, through declassified files, political shifts, and even the collapse of the Soviet Union, no intelligence agency has ever come forward to claim her. While the thought that the Isdal women's death was related to international espionage is fun to entertain, it is ultimately unlikely. If she was a spy, she was a very poor one. Another theory takes a very different angle, one grounded less in geopolitics and more in lifestyle. Some believe the Isdal woman was a high-end sex worker, operating discreetly across European cities like Bergen. This interpretation offers a surprisingly practical explanation for many of the details in her case. Her use of multiple aliases would make sense in a profession where anonymity is essential, not just for privacy, but also for safety. The wigs and changing appearances could allow her to present herself differently to different clients, maintaining separation between identities. Her travel patterns, moving frequently, staying briefly in hotels, and appearing highly organized, could reflect a client-based schedule rather than random movement. Even the witness reports of her interactions with men, often described as tense or transactional, might align with meetings that were strictly business rather than personal. The presence of multiple currencies and significant amounts of cash also fits this theory. Operating internationally and outside formal systems, she may have been paid in cash by clients from different countries, explaining both the variety and the lack of traceable financial records. However, this theory struggles when it comes to her death. While it's possible she became entangled in a dangerous situation, perhaps involving multiple clients or a deal gone wrong, it doesn't clearly explain the highly unusual and deliberate circumstances surrounding how she died. The combination of pills, fire, and physical injuries feels far more complex than a situation that simply escalated. A third theory shifts the focus away from espionage or criminality and instead looks at the Isdal woman through a psychological lens. By the late 1960s, attitudes toward mental health were beginning to change across Europe. Rather than being isolated in institutions, individuals were increasingly seen as needing care, support, and community. Within this context, and because of the nature of her death, Norwegian authorities at the time ultimately ruled her death a suicide. Many of her behaviors can be interpreted through this perspective. Her use of aliases, disguises, and constant movement may not have been calculated deception, but rather the result of paranoia or conditions such as schizophrenia. Reports from hotel staff in Bergen describe unusual and restless behavior, frequently requesting different rooms, rearranging furniture, and even marking walls and doors. These actions align closely with patterns seen in individuals experiencing severe anxiety or paranoid delusions, where environments feel unsafe or compromised. There are also smaller, more human details. Witnesses noted an unpleasant odor about her, which could reflect a decline in personal hygiene, something often associated with prolonged stress, fear, or mental illness. In this light, her efforts to conceal her identity may not have been strategic, but deeply personal. A genuine belief that she needed to hide from something or someone. Eventually, it may have become overwhelming. The Isdalen woman's isolation in Isdalen Valley could have offered a final refuge, a place to disappear forever. Although her death would have certainly been painful, she tried to numb this by consuming 50 to 70 sleeping pills. Importantly, this theory doesn't necessarily stand alone. It can overlap with the previous one. If she was engaged in sex work, it may have been a means of income while trying to outrun perceived threats. This theory also builds on the weaknesses of the sex worker theory by offering a much more likely explanation for her death. In that sense, her death becomes less a mystery of espionage and more a tragic story of someone who couldn't escape their own mind. In my opinion, the truth likely lies somewhere between theories. The combination of a transient high-end sex work lifestyle and underlying mental illness offers one of the most coherent explanations, accounting for both her movements and her tragic death. Yet, the mystery remains far from settled. Decades later, the Isdal woman's story still resists a single, definitive answer. What do you think happened to her? Drop a comment down below with your thoughts. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. If you made it this far, a like and subscribe would be hugely appreciated. I aim to release a deep dive video like this every week.